Hey everybody, it's KennedyHawk from Minis, Cards, and More, and this week's weekly videos from the MCM team are all about a new TCG called Altered. This TCG came out while I was traveling abroad, and it's actually designed and made in Europe, so it was pretty cool to be there for the launch of their card game. Now that I'm back in the US, I found a local scene, I've gotten my Kickstarter boxes, so I wanted to share this fun, exciting, in my opinion, really innovative game with all of you. So this is our video about what is Altered TCG. If you like this video learning about the game, I'm also going to post a playthrough of the tutorial on Board Game Arena, which is free for anyone to play, and then some games with my constructed decks through their official online clients on Board Game Arena. So be sure to like and subscribe for more Marvel Champions, but also Altered TCG content. So let's get underway with our What is Altered TCG video. So, what is Altered? It's a new Kickstarter TCG by Equinox, which is distributed by Asmodee. You can find their website at altered.gg. It's a card game that plans to be a really fun card game, first of all, but also push bounds and revolutionize the TCG experience. TCGs have been out for a long time, so have card games, and I'm not going to say that they're not innovating, but this game is trying to take all the new tools of the modern world and use them to make your experience as most enjoyable as possible as a player or collector of the card game. So in this video, we're going to go over a brief lore introduction, a brief summary of how to play in like 10 minutes or less. We'll talk about card variations, deck constructions, and my initial thoughts on the game. And again, obviously I like it, so if you want to see those tutorial videos or the gameplay videos, you'll have to watch the videos after this one. So, first, we're going to talk about lore, and to do that, I want to show you something pretty cool, which is the altered.gg website. If you go to this website, you can make an account, you can, store your decks, track your collection. Eventually, you'll be able to like sell cards and trade cards to other players. I think you could trade cards. You can find events and all sorts of things. But my favorite thing is this company has gone really deep on the lore of their game, right? It's not a known IP. They're making up something of their own creatively. And if we go here to the read more about lore section, there's an entire story and timeline behind this game. A cataclysmic event happens, and the world has been combined with fantastical worlds, literature worlds, and all sorts of things have become some combined universe, some multiverse of all of these things. And after surviving this cataclysmic event, different factions have arisen, and now they need to explore this altered world. And that's what you're going to be doing in this game. So I'm going to close the website for now. We'll do a whole video on the website probably in November. But for today, just know if you go on here, if you want to read lore about the history of the game, and it's crazier than that. Like if I click on one of these heroes and want to read about their lore, there's a whole lore section for like every card in this game, and there will be as expansions come out. So it's really fun for a person that likes to read and explore literature. Anyway, going on with the lore and how it interfaces with the game. While exploring this unknown region after this cataclysmic event, you are playing as a hero who is paired with a companion, and you have been separated while exploring, but you need to explore this whole region together. Rather than a combat in this game, we're going to be racing to reunite our hero and companion and be the first person to explore the entire adventure track that you can see here on this screen. Like I said, cards have lore, so here's an example of a literary character, right? Dorothy Gail from The Wizard of Oz. As you go up in different rarities of the card art changes. Some of this is explained through the lore in the page. I'm not going to read every paragraph to you because I want, as you open cards, to go read about them and have other engagement in this world outside of just the game. I've found that to be really fun, but just wanted to show you that like every card has this this lore page that you can learn about that character. And I can't scroll because this is a screenshot, but it even has like the source of that character. So it's got the story in our universe, but also the inspiration behind Dorothy Gail. She came from this book and blah, 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 blah. Here's a bunch of information about the original character, Dorothy Gail. So I love it. It's super neat and cool to see someone fully invest into this before the game even launches. Alright, so what are the game hooks? The premise of the game is really solid. You're going to play units or characters to either help your hero or your companion progress on this track to try to reach each other. You can choose whether you want to progress one or both, or whether you want to try to avoid letting your opponent make progress as you race to explore this unknown region. It has a modern resourcing system, meaning we draw cards, we put them face down, there's no searching for lands or energies or whatever from Pokemon or Magic. The game assumes to be more than just a game, but to alter the TCG experience using tools in the modern world. So I'm going to briefly describe some of them in this video, but again, we'll do the website on a whole nother day. The website includes a digital collection app, a deck builder that can create a QR code, so when you go to a tournament, you can prove that you digitally own those cards. It has trading capability, and it's already linked to an online client, so you can play this game for free online immediately after this video if you'd like. Local play is still encouraged because all of their organized play is tracked through the app. As you go to local play events, you progress in like an adventure pass for each season, and you'll unlock alt arts for the different cards and foils of different cards through this OP system. No like unique gameplay things in the OP system, but you do get these like incentivized bonuses for playing not just on your computer, which big thumbs up. And you have the ability to pick and choose which cards you want to bling out, which we'll talk about later. Basically, when you open a pack, instead of having a foil in every pack, there'll be random packs that have QR cards that let you upgrade any common or any rare or any unique card to a foil. And you get to pick which one. So if I want to bling out my deck, I don't have to search for a Dorothy Gail foil. I can find a rare foiler and foil her right away as my choice to spend that QR code, which is fascinating in itself. All right, so let's talk about the game. You all know me. I like lore. Lore is very fun. It's very important to me in Marvel Champions, but in a world that I don't know, the game needs to be solid for me when I play it. So each game is a race between two hero-companion pairs. Each player is going to pick a hero or companion and build a deck using that hero or companion's faction. You can see here Tasia and Narura, I can talk, is a Muna hero, the green faction, and each hero has so many reserve slots and so many landmark slots. In the first set, everyone has 2 and 2, so you can have 2 cards in reserve at the end of your turn, 2 cards in your landmark slots. We'll talk more about those later. Each card also has a unique ability that you'll probably want to build your deck around. So there's 6 colors or 6 factions that you can choose from, and your entire deck is going to come from that faction. So if you're a person like me that doesn't like to collect everything in a TCG, I can open my box, sell my other 5 factions, and keep my green cards. Maybe that's what I'm doing. Hint, hint. If you have greens, trade them to me. But you could also build cards in multiple factions, and you don't have to worry about them competing from deck to deck and things like that. All right, so to start the game, you're going to begin the game by placing the adventure row between the 2 players, like you see here. There's going to be a hero region that has 3 different colored attribute symbols in it on one side, and there'll be a companion region on the other side, and there'll be 3 face-down cards in the middle that are randomized between 3 cards. So the order of them and orientation of them will be randomized. Heroes and companion tokens are placed on their sides of the track, and again, our goal is to get those heroes and companions to each other. You're going to place your hero on alternating sides sort of in the middle of the adventure track, and then to one side of your hero by the hero token will be your hero expedition, and to the other side, this way, camera, is going to be the companion expedition. Each round, players are going to be able to play characters or cast spells or play landmarks, but their goal is going to be to help their hero progress or their companion progress. So here, the purple Ysmir player has placed a Dorothy Gail in their hero expedition, hoping to help that hero progress at the end of that round, meaning move one more region forward in the token, or in the track. As you move forward in the track to flipped face-down cards, you're going to flip them face-up, revealing what regions or attributes are important in that space of the track. More on that here in a minute. So how do we progress? Near the end of each round, for each expedition, players will compare attributes. If you have the highest, ties don't count, attribute in at least one of the attributes, your token will advance. And it's only in the space that your token is. Likewise, if your opponent has the highest stat in one of their tokens' attributes, they're going to move one space forward. So to start with, this bottom figure is where we start. Both heroes are in a space that have a grassland, a mountain, and a water attribute. So it's possible that I would win in grass, my opponent would win in water, and we would both move our token. Or maybe we would tie in 2 of them, and I would win in 1, so I would only get to move forward. The top row shows after a card has flipped, there might be only 1 or 2 attributes in the region you're moving into. So here we only care about the mountain region. So if I win in water and I win in grass, it doesn't matter because we only care about mountains. And as we move our tokens might be in different regions. So I might care about the attributes in my region for moving forward, but I also care about the attributes of my opponent's token for sort of stopping their progress and trying to get to ties to delay their movement. All right, so each round is split into 5 phases of play. Basically, each round is a day, so you can think about it like that. You're going to wake up in the morning, you're going to change who the first player is, ready all your cards, draw 2 cards, and put a card into mana optionally, card face down, that your opponent does not know. Then you're going to go into the noon phase, where at noon effects trigger. It's basically a triggering window. Then you'll go to the afternoon, and this is where we take turns, playing cards to the different expeditions to try to help our hero and our companion. After we're both done with the afternoon, we're going to go to Dusk and compare attributes and progress our tokens, at which point night will fall, our characters will need to rest, and we'll discard down to our reserve or landmark allotment. That was a lot, so we're going to go through it phase by phase so you understand what's going on. So the first phase, morning. This is really easy. It's like the get ready for the day phase. You're going to skip this in the first round. In the first round, instead of doing the morning, you're going to decide a first player randomly. Both players will draw 6 cards and resource 3 of them. This is non-optional. You'll start with 3 resources and 3 cards. You'll know your opponent's hero, so you can kind of tailor your strategy to them at this point. So normally, after the first round, in morning, you're going to change the first player to your opponent or to yourself. You're going to ready all your cards and draw 2 cards and optionally mana 1, starting with the first player. So they'll know if you're going to go up in the curve to decide if they're going to go up in the curve. At some point in the game, it's more advantageous to take the 2 cards and keep them, very much like Star Wars Unlimited. At noon, we're going to trigger all of the timing window effects that say at noon. So example, this Sigismar and Wingspan hero and companion pairing says at noon, create an Ortis Recruit 1/1/1 soldier token in your hero expedition. So you're basically going to start with a 1/1/1 character in your hero expedition with the little text on that character token saying, when I leave the expedition zone, remove me from the game. I'm not like a recurring character. I just spawn a 1/1/1 every turn, push a little progress, a little pressure on my opponent. Lots of other cards have at noon triggers. You're going to trigger all of the active players first, and then all of the second players. Next, we go to afternoon. This is the bulk of the game. This is where we're going to take turns playing cards, starting with the first player. You're going to take alternating turns, playing a card, my opponent plays a card, I play a card, my opponent plays a card, until one player passes. When that player passes, they are out for the round. So you're going to want to play and sort of delay your final plan, getting to your opponent, which makes it advantageous to play lots of low-cost cards. Players are going to take turns playing cards from their hands and triggering free actions. So what is a free action? You can see on Lindiwe, the hero here. They have a free action to exhaust this character to create a 0/0/0 Maw token in your companion expedition. And it has this text that when you sacrifice a character, it's going to gain boosts, which are basically like +1/+1/+1 tokens. So you're going to build your whole deck around building up this Maw or using the Maw as a sacrificed character, but you could exhaust Lindway to create that Maw and then play a card. If you passed, you'd still be out for the round, so you want to avoid passing unless you're sure you're done for that round. So what are these characters that you're playing during the afternoon phase? Here's an example of a character card, Dorothy Gail again. So she has a name, they have traits, character, and citizen, they have a faction, purple or Ysmir. They have a cost to be played from hand. In this blue orb on the top left, Dorothy costs 5 to play from hand. They have a cost to play from reserve. We'll get to that again in a little bit, but Dorothy's a little bit cheaper from reserve. And then she has attributes. She has 3 in grasslands or forest, 2 in mountains, and 2 in lakes or oceans. So kind of like a 3/2/2 character. And they also have an ability. So Dorothy's ability says, when I'm played from hand, that's what that hand symbol means, you may select a character and send it to reserve. So I could reserve one of my own characters, probably don't want to do that. Or I could send one of my opponent's characters to their reserve, removing their stats from the expedition for this turn. So you notice that Dorothy is cheaper when played from reserve than hand, but that's because her ability only triggers from hand. So cards will have different balanced effects between their hand and reserve costs depending on where their abilities are active and things like that. There's also spell and landmark cards. Here's an example of a spell, Off You Go. It costs 2 from hand, 4 from reserve, and it says send to reserve a character with a hand cost of 3 or less. So a lot cheaper when it's a surprise from your hand, but also can be threatening to sit there from reserve with your opponent knowing, oh, they could just send this back to my reserve. Note that spells don't go immediately to your discard pile unless they say they do. So when I play Off You Go for 2 from hand, it sits in reserve threatening my opponent for a while. We also have landmarks or permanents. There were 2 landmark slots for each hero. So Bountiful Meadow is just a 2-cost card from hand or from reserve. Permanents are not going to go to rest at the end of the night. They're going to stay out there in your permanent slot unless you go to more than 2 landmarks. So Bountiful Meadow says exhaust the next plant traded character you play, cost 1 less. So before you play a character, you can take that free action to reduce the cost of a plant. Ramp. It's good. After we've taken all our turns and we've both passed, we're going to progress to Dusk, the 4th phase of each round. Here we're going to see who will move tokens. Remember, to move a token, you have to have the most in an attribute matching the expedition where your token is. So if my hero has all 3 attributes present, I could win in any one of those 3 attributes. I could lose in the other 2. As long as I win in one, I'm going to make some progress. But be careful, because my opponent has the same ability. They can sneak in a win in mountains when I might not care about mountains. So it's important to always remember where the tokens are on the track when you're playing cards during the afternoon. So during Dusk, you're going to compare attributes and you're going to make progress. Then we're going to go to night to begin for the next round. First, we're going to rest. This means that every character in both of our expeditions is going to be sent to reserve, except for a special few cases. If a character has an anchored token with this anchored symbol, that's going to mean that instead of going to rest, you're going to remove that anchored token, basically keeping that anchored character out for 1 extra turn. Likewise, asleep tokens do the same thing. If a character has an asleep token and they would rest, so only if they would rest, go to reserve during rest, you're going to remove the asleep token instead and leave that character in their expedition. The only difference between anchored and asleep is asleep characters do not count their attributes during Dusk. So during that struggle to decide who makes progress, your asleep characters will not count that. So you might want to put your opponent's characters to sleep, might be a cheap way of soft removal, or you might play big beefy statted characters that have cheap costs, but they start asleep, so their stats don't count for an extra turn. The last exception here is a fleeting character, and that's shown with this little blue token. Anytime a fleeting character is sent to reserve, they go to your discard pile instead. So some characters will gain fleeting when they're played. They'll be big statted characters that sort of only get played once, because you can play characters from your reserve or from your hand. So characters from your reserve can be played anytime for their reserve cost, just like a normal card action. The other thing is that whenever you play a card from reserve, you will put a fleeting token on it. So that includes the spell. While you're resolving the spell from reserve, it will end up going to your discard pile, because if it would be sent to reserve, which after you play something, it goes to reserve if it's a spell, it'll get sent to your discard pile because it has this fleeting token. Likewise, if I play Dorothy Gail in round 1, and then I want to play her again in round 2, I'm going to have to put a fleeting token on her that second time, so when she tries to rest, or if someone pushes her to reserve, she's going to go to the discard pile instead. So each character basically has 2 lives, and it also means there's different abilities to balance card draw. Drawing a card in my hand is very powerful. Putting a card into reserve means I probably only get to play it one time, so it's like, in my opinion, drawing a card is like worth 2 cards in a normal game, and putting something into reserve is worth 1 card. So you're going to move things back to reserve, and then you're going to discard your reserve and landmark down to their allotment, which is 2 and 2. So if you end up putting 3 characters back into reserve, you're going to have to choose one to discard. You can't build up this massive pile of resources in reserve that never goes away. Likewise with landmarks, you can build up to more than 3 if that's advantageous to you, but then you're going to discard down to 2 during the night phase. There's one other type of token we should talk about, and it's a boost token that just gives a +1/+1/+1. When a character goes to reserve, you remove all tokens from them. So the fleeting characters are going to go to discard instead. An anchored or asleep character will avoid going to reserve, but a boosted character will go to reserve and remove those boost tokens unless the card says otherwise. Alright, so hand, reserve, all these sorts of things. How do they balance this game? How does this work? Here's 3 examples of cards from this game. So Dorothy Gail we looked at earlier. She's a 3/2/2, 5 costs from hand, 3 costs from reserve, Ysmir character that has the hand ability, you may send a character to reserve. So it's a body with removal from hand, but from reserve it's just sort of like a medium statted body. So it's at least a body you can play to stall actions, but it's not going to trigger its ability. Ada Lovelace, the middle card here, is from the Axiom Brown faction. She costs 2 from hand and 2 from reserve, with 1/3/1 as her statistics. So her statistics aren't that much worse than Dorothy, and she's a lot cheaper. But her ability has this little card symbol from it, and that means only when played from reserve. So when you play Ada from reserve, you may put a card from your hand into reserve, and if it's a permanent card or a landmark card, you're going to draw a card. So she can be a source of card ramp, but only that second time you play her. So you have to sneak her into reserve in some way, or you end up paying 4 and then putting another card into reserve to cycle and draw another card, which is a lot of work, but can be advantageous. And then our third card here is a Muna faction, green faction, the Spindle Harvesters. They cost 1 from hand or 1 from reserve, and they have an arrow ability. An arrow ability means when I'm played from anywhere. If you play me from your hand, I trigger this ability. If you play me from reserve, I trigger this ability. If you have some crazy card that says flip the top card of your deck and play it, I trigger this ability. So play from anywhere is what that arrow means. So here, the Spindle Harvesters just give themselves anchored. So they really low stats, just a single green, but they're going to sit out there for 2 turns. So it's sort of an investment for a future turn, and if you can sneak boosts onto them, it's even better. So different cards are going to be balanced and trigger off different spots. We haven't talked about card rarity at all, because this is a TCG, so there are rarities of cards. Every card has sort of 4 rarities to it, if you will. So Dorothy Gail here on the left is the common version of Dorothy. She triggers when played from hand. The second card is another copy of Dorothy Gail, but she has no border. This is the rare version of the Ysmir Dorothy Gail. If you notice, there's some things that are in yellow on her card. Her play from reserve now costs 5. Why would they do that? Like, the rare version is more expensive to play from reserve. If we look down at the ability, her ability now not only triggers from hand, but also triggers from reserve. So instead of just being a medium statted body from reserve, she's another source of removal from reserve, but they had to up the cost to balance the card at that point. So whenever you open a rare card, you can always see what's different in this rare card by looking for what's colored in yellow. It might be the attributes, it might be the cost, it might have an entirely different ability. But that's how you know what a rare card is. And then the third row here is a yellow titled Dorothy Gail. That is a unique card. So this is one of the other new things in this game, is there are truly unique cards. So there might be 500 Dorothy Gales that are unique, but every single one of them is slightly different. And that might scare some people, but when we get to deck building, you might feel a little bit better about it. So this Dorothy Gail cost 4 and then 2, so she's cheaper than all of the other versions, and has 3, 2, 4 as her stats, so she's still got like 9 for her stats total, which is pretty good. And from hand, you may put a card from your hand into reserve. If it's a spell, you may send to reserve a character with a hand cost of 4. So that's a lot more conditional. So it is a unique card. And there might be a bunch of different versions of it, of putting different cards into reserve or doing different things. And all of those things will make this card unique. It might just be a stat change, it might be a cost change, it might be an ability change or a conditional thing added to that ability. But this card is one of a kind, which is pretty cool because you can open some that are amazing and some that are like almost equivalent to their rare. But they're very exciting to open and exciting to talk about and compare at the card store. Dorothy's unique thing here is she also has this little purple box at the bottom. Any card can have this. This is a support ability. So that's a free action that says when I'm in reserve, you can discard me from reserve to resolve this ability. And then over here, the 4th slot, we have a red Dorothy Gail. But we've only seen her in the purple faction. That's kind of weird. It's hard to see, but if you look at the card numbers at the bottom, this Dorothy Gail is labeled as an F instead of an R. And that means that it's an out-of-faction rare. So every card has a faction they belong to. Dorothy belongs to the purple faction. She has a common version, a rare version, and then she has an unlimited number of unique versions. But she also spawns in one other faction only as a rare card. So you could get a rare Dorothy Gail in the red faction. Note nothing on her card is yellow. That's saying nothing has changed from the common other than the faction in this card. Some out-of-faction cards will also gain like yellow effects saying, hey, I'm slightly different than the common version. But in this case, Dorothy in red is so special to red because they don't have a lot of removal that that's special enough. So she didn't gain anything extra for being a rare. So that's pretty cool. That means you can have cards pop up in other factions. Every card's only going to spawn in one other faction, so you don't have to worry about like an unlimited number of cards existing in the card pool other than uniques. But every card will also pop up somewhere else as like an altered version of themselves. One thing I really love about this game that you might notice is that the character card evolves through the rarity. So here in the common Dorothy Gail, she's being pulled through a portal where she was on the yellow brick road. And then I think in the rare version, she is pulling someone else into like this underwater algae land, and she has like a wizard hat on. And then in the unique version, she is now the Wizard of Oz. She has a full blown wizard hat, a spell book, and she's pulling people through a portal to escape that underwater world. So you can read more about that in the lore. But every card is like that, where they're common to rare to unique version, sort of tells this story, which is really cutesy and unique. So deck building, I said don't freak out about the unique thing. It's similar to Keyforge where there's like unique decks and things like that, but you're not going to have to buy a million cards until you get all the uniques to build a 40 card unique deck, because there are special rules when building this game. So deck building rules are your deck must contain 40 to 60 cards to be a legal deck in constructed. You have to include one hero, and all cards must match the faction of that hero. You can have no more than 3 unique cards in your deck. So you can't just buy 40 unique cards and have 40 cards that no one's ever seen before. You can have 3 unique cards that you might want to shape your deck around. You can have no more than 15 rare cards. So you also aren't just going to have all these common cards in your binder, because of your 40 card deck, only 18 cards are going to be not common. So that means that everything else in your deck is going to be common, and you can also have no more than 3 of a card by family or by name. So if I want to include 3 copies of Dorothy Gail in my deck, I could include 3 commons. I could include a common and 2 rares. I could include 3 rares. I could include a common, a rare, and a unique, or 2 rares and a unique, but I can't include more than 3 copies of Dorothy Gail. So deciding which card it's okay to be a common versus which I really want to upgrade to rare for that yellow text is really important, and it's a key decision to crafting your deck. I played at a local store event recently where my opponent and I had almost the same 40 card deck, but we had chosen different cards to be rare versus common, and it completely altered the way we play our deck. Hence the game name, and hence how the game can be really fun with decision making and deck building, which is one of my favorite things to do. All right, so my initial thoughts on Altered. Obviously, I like the game. I've been pretty pro towards it when talking, but here are some of the great things about this game. It's a good engine for play. It's really fun to play. It's very sequential. It's very back and forth. There's not a lot of downtime for one player, which I love. It seems super light, but it's actually incredibly deep. You have to really think about your decisions and sort of play this chess match with your opponents of what decisions they're going to make, which is really rewarding once you get to high levels of play. The mix of opened and closed information is very exciting and something I haven't seen anywhere else. There's always open information of what units do I have on the board, but having information of what reserve cards they have available to them, plus the hidden cards in their hand, makes things very exciting and very, groundbreaking, in my opinion. The lore is fun, and it should give a lot of room for growth. We're not tying ourselves into a specific IP like Pokemon or Marvel or whatever, where you're going to see the same characters over and over again. They could go into different book spaces and anything in the open domain, which is super exciting to me. OP incentivizes casual play. Whether you win or lose at your casual event, you're going to get 1 point on your adventure pass. They also have promo packs that you can get in-store only through in-store play. But I think that the OP tracking into the app, helping you find events in the app, is mainly geared right now on casual play, which is slated to change as more sets come out in the future. And my favorite thing is almost fully functional website and online client at launch. I can play any card in my collection. I can scan them into my app and show them to friends. I can share my collection with friends. I can trade over the app. All of that happened on launch, not like a promise of someday in the future this will happen. So some of the cons, I said almost functional website, because there's a bunch of features on the website they've showed us in videos that aren't unlocked yet. So eventually there's going to be a print-on-demand service. So if I open a unique card and I want to build 2 variations of a deck so I can test them in person, I can print on demand my cards and make multiple copies of them. I can't just have 1 copy of a rare. If I want to play in a tournament, I'm supposed to digitally own that card, so I would need 3 copies of that rare. But for play testing and building decks, especially casual play with my kids and wife, super fun. And there's going to be an online marketplace eventually where you can sell your cards online through the app officially. It transfers the digital rights so that that person can then print their cards, so you don't even have to ship the card. But again, you're supposed to digitally own the card to play it in a tournament, so you're going to create a little QR code in the app to show, yep, all these cards are in my digital collection. You can also foil cards on the website eventually, so you get these foiler cards in your packs. You scan the QR code, it adds a foiler to your collection. You can then choose, hey, I want to make this card a foil version when I print it, and now I can print this card and foil as many times as I want, which is super neat. One of the other cons, OP incentivizes casual play right now, which is bound to happen when a game first launches, but it always makes me nervous because we know that casual play doesn't always hold players' attention forever, but competitive play super does. And the other con, in my opinion, is unique balancing. I got 4 boxes in the Kickstarter, and some of my uniques were real bangers. They were amazing. And some of them, I would open them and say, wow, this is worse than the common. So it doesn't happen often that cards are worse than the common. Usually they fall somewhere between the rare and the common. And what you'll find talking with the online community is a lot of times you like cards like that because they open up another rare slot in your deck. But it's way more exciting when unique cards are truly unique bangers than maybe mild duds. But at the same time, since it's only 3 cards in your deck, it doesn't bother me that much, and I think they're going to get better at it as the game goes on. So would I recommend it? I think it's a 4.5 out of 5. It's one of the top TCGs I have played of recent. I think that I think it's up there with SWU and probably One Piece in innovation and should be popularness. I don't know if it'll get as popular because the IP power isn't behind it, but the game is just as fun as those others, so I highly recommend you check it out. So that is the end of this video. If you'd like to learn more or watch some games of Altered, like and subscribe, and watch the 2 videos following this in our MCM weekly video feed. Thanks. We'll be back next week with some Marvel Champions decks for our final week of October. All right, see you.